Hey everybody, it's Sal from TvLittleHouse, back on the Comicstorian team once again. Benny was having some problems sorting out the supernatural history of Spider-Man, so I've stepped in to sort this whole thing out for you guys. Alright, so you are familiar with our stories here about Spider-Verse, and there's always one group of villains that crop up at the end of them. They are known as the Inheritors, and they're the family of villains that are trying to kill off all the Spider-Men in the Spider-Verse event. Now, I want to clarify something with you here. Morlun is part of the really supernatural element of the Spider-Man character, and a lot of the things that get brought up or referenced here are normally written out or ignored by other writers for the Spider-Man character. They're still in continuity, because characters seem to still kind of remember what happened, but he doesn't use any of those new powers from that story The Other. Now, I'm going to get into the origin of Morlun, but I want to explain how things were revealed about him in publication order this time, as this whole spider totem Morlun thing is really weird. Things began when Spider-Man met a man named Ezekiel, and Ezekiel explained the supernatural element of Spider-Man's powers. You see, Spider-Man is technically a totem, or a bridge between man and beast, with the powers of both. This can be seen in Spider-Man's villains like the Scorpion, Rhino, Vulture, Dr. Octopus, and the such are all trying to kill that one spider totem, as he is typically viewed as a hero. But there are others who feast on these totems, other worldly beings who try to devour them, and this is where Morlun first arrived. He shows up in this storyline to torment Peter Parker with his minion Dex, who's just a regular guy. He's not magic or anything, he's just a tormented lackey. Now, we really don't know that much about Morlun at this point, because he was first created in this one story, and he's portrayed as just simply an otherworldly, vampiric-type threat to Spider-Man. So in this first story, Morlun punches Spider-Man, and then because of this, he's able to track him anywhere, because Spider-Man discovers that Morlun's DNA is actually contained in the genus of every animal in the animal kingdom. So Spider-Man first defeats Morlun by actually irradiating his body with radioactive isotopes, so that when Morlun came to feast upon him, he actually wound up absorbing a lot of radiation as a result of it. He pleaded with Spider-Man for his own survival, but his minion Dex then shows up and shoots him, causing his body to crumble to dust, not unlike the death of a certain other beloved Spider-Man character, Ben Reilly, the Spider-Clone. But this is when we see one of the first additional powers of the Inheritors, because Morlun shows up again in a story arc known as The Other. In The Other, Spider-Man actually winds up developing new powers since he accepted the spirit of the spider that the Spider God bestowed upon him. Morlun actually winds up putting Spider-Man on death's door in this story, going as far as to rip out one of his eyeballs and eating it. Spider-Man then is brought to the hospital where he appears to be dying, but then Mary Jane stepped in and distracted Morlun. Morlun broke her forearm, which forced Spider-Man to reawaken with new powers, including spider stingers. Think of them as bony protrusions, not unlike Wolverine's claws, but they blast out of his forearms, which Spider-Man uses to stab Morlun near death. But don't worry, Spider-Man doesn't kill him with the stingers. Instead, he transforms into a spider monster and then eats Morlun's face, causing Morlun to once again crumble into dust. After this, Spider-Man succumbs to his wounds, he dies, he bursts into spiders, and then those spiders form a cocoon wherein Spider-Man is reborn and rebuilt as Peter Parker with new fancy Spider-Man powers, including stingers that blast out of his forearms. Other nifty keen powers that Spider-Man gets as a result of accepting The Other include night vision, enhanced healing and strength, and the ability to communicate with arachnids. Some would argue that this is when Spider-Man actually gets his organic webbing, but in reality, that took place in an earlier story arc during Avengers Disassembled, when Spider-Man was once again turned into a spider, he dies, and then bursts out of its body, reborn, but this time with organic web shooters. Don't blame us, folks, that's what happened. Eventually, when Straczynski left the title, many different authors wanted a chance to write the character of Spider-Man, including Bob Gale and Dan Slott, but they didn't want to deal with all this ridiculous continuity, so they simply ignored it, and eventually these powers were phased out of the character. After the story arc One More Day, they simply wrote out his organic webbing, so he was back to his original self, mechanical web shooters and all. Most assumed the story was written out of continuity at this point, but there was a reference to it during the Spider Island story, when Kane, yet another spider clone, told Peter he had reawakened with new and exciting powers, and Parker basically said, yeah, been there, done that. As it stands, it appears that all the powers are gone at this point, because in the Scarlet Spider story arc, the Spider God arrived and offered Kane the abilities of the Other because Peter Parker rejected them. Kane accepted them and turned into a hulking spider monster until he learned to control his rage and then turned back to normal. As it stands right now, we don't really know what's going on with the other powers, because it seems like Kane still has his abilities, but we are way off track from Morlun right now, so let's get back on track. Morlun actually reappears reappeared a while later to battle against the Black Panther of all characters. T'Challa managed to defeat him, sending him into an alternate dimension where he would battle against the endless hordes of death present there. And now, finally, we can get into the Spider-Verse event. Morlun has arrived without any explanation to begin feasting on spider totems of alternate universes, starting with Spider-Man of 1602. Over the course of this Spider-Verse event, by the way, we have discovered his origins at last. Morlun is part of a family of beings like him known as the Inheritors. Long ago, on Earth 000, they took part in a battle against the Master Weaver, a spider being who seems to control all of the Spider-Verse multiverse timelines. He's the one who controls the Web of Life. Well, the Inheritors captured the Master Weaver at the cost of the Matriarch's life, due to Morlun's brother Karn's own hesitation. Now that they have the Master Weaver captured, they use his powers to manipulate the timelines and dimensions by jumping between those dimensions. Using this power, they conquer Earth 001. With the entirety of Earth 1 in their control, they create a system in which they can clone their bodies and download their consciousness into new bodies. So the moment an Inheritor dies, he's reborn in his clone with all of his memories. With these new powers and technology, the Inheritors began traveling throughout all the multiverse dimensions, killing off the various versions of the animal totems, but primarily spider totems. Now with the history of his appearances out of the way, and the origin of the Inheritors themselves, let me explain what's going on with the Spider-Verse event. So, when Superior Spider-Man got lost in the time jump, he eventually started hopping through the worlds in the multiverse, and started stumbling across the worlds that the Inheritors had just been to, where he saw dead Peter Parkers pretty much all over the universes. Realizing there was an enemy who was killing off all these different Spider-Men, he decides to assemble an army to face off against the Inheritors. This leads to him building up the Spider-Verse army to fight the Inheritors, but with the ability to look into all the different timelines and dimensions and worlds. The Inheritors knew this was going to happen. There's actually a prophecy that states the Inheritors will lose in the final battle against the Spider-Man because of 3 individuals, those being the Scion, the Bride, and the Other. Now, you already know who the Other is in the Know Your Universe, but for the sake of the mystery of the Spider-Verse event, I'm not going to reveal the Scion and the Bride in this video. They are revealed in their story arcs already, so please don't leave comments stating who they are. Lastly, let's go over the family and the powers. As for powers, the Inheritors basically have superhuman strength, speed, stamina, durability, agility, reflexes. They get stronger with every spider totem that they eat. They're also immortal to an extent, as they can make new bodies, and they also have the ability to absorb the life force of beings. It works on anybody they meet, they just like to use it on totems. Now, the family of Inheritors is apparently quite a large family. Solus is the father, and seems to be the strongest of them all, as he was able to even absorb the Captain Universe Spider-Man's essence. The children are Thanos, Malos, Morsha, Bora, Brix, Deimos, and Verna. Morlun is also one of the children, and the one that Spider-Man first met. It should also be noted that Morlun is fighting to become the proper heir to his father. Karn is currently estranged and forced to wear a kind of Bioshocky diving helmet as punishment for letting their mother die. He hopes to earn his place back in with the family by doing other spider totemy murdering things. Lastly, Kenix doesn't hunt spider totems, but he did invent the cloning technology that they use and is trying to clone Spider-Man so he can have an endless supply of totems. Whew, lots to take in on this Know Your Universe, but if you learned something new, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more explanations. Chat with Benny and me at Comicstorian and at Sal Says What, and we'll see you guys next time right here at Comicstorian.